guys, funny seeing you here again. I know it's been a while. By a while, closer to
5 months.
but here we are, we're here, we're queer, we're ready to talk about spiritual bypassing. I want to make this video as a start to a series on my channel called Makeup and Magic, where I do my makeup, you do your makeup with me, and we talk about all things spiritual, some topics that I think need to be discussed, especially in a space that includes Black, brown, colonized people. And that is something that has been a very increasingly important part of my life, especially with all that happened during 2020. So let's just get right into it. Yeah, so here is to changing the narrative, and here is to amazing, wonderful, better things in 2021. So if spirituality and tarot and makeup and talking about Black, brown issues interest you, then consider subscribing and liking this video and staying tuned. Let's just chat. It's been so long since I have sat down in front of the camera. It feels good, honestly. It feels so good to be in this creative space. I just want to update everyone on how I've been doing, what I have been up to, me and my spiritual journey. So for the past 4 or 5 months, it has been quite the roller coaster of both an internal and external changes that have been happening. I am in a completely different place than I was when I last filmed, and I feel like me and my spiritual journey, I have, elevated multiple times throughout the past year. I have really learned so much about myself and the universe. For me personally, a couple of themes that have been popping up for me a lot over the past 4 to 5 months is being honest with myself. And I'm a Pisces, so naturally I love to daydream. I love, coming up with stories in my head and living my life through that way. But that has,
I wouldn't want to say negatively impacted me.
in the actuality of how the universe works, there's no such thing as wrong versus right, and positive and negative. That is something that we decide for ourselves. The way I'm trying to live my life more so is there is and there isn't. And I have realized that I have used my own spirituality to both neglect and ignore and come up with excuses for behaviors towards myself, behaviors that I have noticed in my physical and romantic relationships. And that's why I wanted to make this video, is because I really realized that I was not being truthful with myself about how I was acting and how I was using spirituality as kind of like a scapegoat to not really address what has not been working for me. I think because we have moved into such a technological space and everything is digital and everything is online and it's not tangible to us, that it's very easy to hide behind that. People talk a lot about finding your own truth, living your truth, blah blah blah, and I thought I was doing that. I was being a bit performative. Instead of sitting down and meditating because some guru online, told me about this new meditation technique that I thought was cool and that thought would, make my life better. Instead of doing that, I'm meditating on my terms when I want. I was confusing doing those things like meditation and spiritual practice and, all of the different things that you can do to express your spirituality. I was doing it because other people were doing it and because I thought that I should do it because I saw the results that they had, as opposed to doing these things because it genuinely makes me feel good and it's a form of self-love and self-care. And that's a very thin line, a very silver lining to walk on, because it's very easy for us to not be transparent with ourselves and not be able to differentiate the difference between those two. Also, don't forget to hydrate. Water is so good. Like, if someone asked me what my favorite drink is, it's 100% water. So, I want to talk about
Spiritual bypassing.
Spiritual bypassing is using spirituality and spiritual beliefs and practices as a way to diminish one's own feelings, particularly like negative feelings, self-deprecating feelings, or doing that to other people. So, for instance, the best example that I have found is, let's say that you have a friend who recently lost a loved one, let's say to COVID. Understandably, they're going through a really hard time. Maybe they've gone into a really dark space thinking that, you know, the world is terrible and it's cruel, and how will they ever heal and move on from losing their loved one? And spiritual bypassing would mean that you then go to them and tell them that everything happens for a reason. Pain is temporary, and you'll get through this really quick if you just do X, Y, and Z. It's a more passive, aggressive way of invalidating someone's feelings behind the veil of spirituality and positivity and, oh, I'm doing this because I care about you. And I think that there are appropriate and respectful and effective ways of using spirituality to help someone who is in that situation, and not just when someone loses a loved one, but it could be for anything, like you lose your job, or you went through a breakup, or, you know, anything that causes trauma and affects us and changes our behaviors in a negative way, whatever that means for you. Spirituality does talk a lot about healing, growing, moving past things, letting things go so that you can move on and you're not always stuck in that mindset of scarcity and negative mindset and everything sucks right now and I'm so sad, right? And that is, I think, a very valuable and good side of the spiritual community, especially with the pandemic and all of this trauma and all of these issues with race and equity and class disparity and, you know, everything that now we as a collective are waking up to. All these things that are happening, we're using spirituality as a way to cope with it, right? A lot more people are becoming spiritual and understanding their spirituality and studying about, you know, all these different practices, and that's amazing. But when you go to someone who is going through an emotional experience, whether that be good or bad, you can also use spiritual bypassing as a way to ignore the underlying issues and problems that come with that. Because when you are spiritual bypassing someone, when you are flooding them with all these ways of how they should be more positive, how they should be doing this so they can get over this trauma, you're really forgetting about your own humanity and you're forgetting about their humanity. I think the danger of living in a space now where people are becoming more awakened and spiritually in tuned and enlightened is that we think that spirituality means that we all have to now be positivity people and be health gurus and health freaks and be, you know, more in tune with ourselves and aligned and like focus so much on that. Spirituality also validates you sitting in the uncomfortable space of pain and heartbreak and trauma and grief and anger. It teaches you that that is just as important and just as valid on your journey and your experience as a human. And a lot of these spiritual gurus and these spiritual accounts, they're only talking about the positivity side. They're only talking about how you can improve and how you can be better and how you can be a kinder person, how you can be a more enlightened person. Has anyone ever told you that it's okay to be sad because that's how we are able to feel happiness? Because without sadness, how would we ever know what happiness is? how would we ever have anything to compare it to really appreciate and understand the joy of being happy? And the same goes the other way around. If we're always happy, but we don't experience sadness, are we really living in the fullness of happiness? Are we really living in the fullness of our joy when we have nothing to compare it to? We live in a dichotomy of almost everything in our lives. You know, yin and yang, black and white, right and wrong. That's how the human race has decided that it's going to view most things. And when I say human race, I mean more of like as a collective, this is the thinking that we have moved into. If we don't appreciate and allow ourselves to feel the other side of things, how will we ever truly know what it feels like to be human and to be happy and to be sad? We need both parts of the equation. You're never going to live in your fullness and truly be happy if you have never felt a moment of sadness. The spiritual community, I think, a lot of times focuses too much on how to be positive and how to be enlightened and how to improve yourself. But first of all, that adds a lot of pressure to people. An extreme amount of pressure that I think in this day and age is very unrealistic, first of all. And we forget about our humanity. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to think negative, self-deprecating thoughts. It happens. If we just pretend that it doesn't happen or invalidate ourselves, we are never going to move out of that cycle, and it's just going to keep happening, and we're just going to keep getting more frustrated over and over again with ourselves because we're not actually addressing the issue. I have gotten into a cycle, or not anymore, but I was in a cycle of spiritual bypassing my own experience and invalidating my own experience, and it really wasn't until very recently, like literally within the past 2 weeks, that I realized, wow, I have been lying to myself about a lot of things. A big theme in my life, I would say for the past 2 years, are romantic relationships. I am a Pisces Sun, Pisces Rising, Cancer Moon. I also have an Aries Venus in the first house. So me in relationships is very passionate. I give 1,001% to whoever I'm with. I give a lot, but I also expect a lot in return. My romantic relationships have not been satisfying, and I always feel disappointed. What I was telling myself is, damn, I'm giving this person everything. I'm giving my time and effort, and they're just not giving me the same in return, so they must suck, and I'm just going to move on and cut them out of my life and, you know, just keep doing the same thing, this cycle, until I finally found the one or someone who is worthwhile. What I recently realized is what I was doing that was causing those things to happen. I was doing it to myself, and I was spiritual bypassing my own feelings and letting my ego get in the way, telling myself that, oh, it's the other person's problem. Like, I'm giving all this time and energy and they're not giving it back, so like it must be their issue, like they're the problem, they're the one that's not worthy enough. Okay, well, hold on. What kind of energy are you giving? How is that affecting them? How do they perceive the kind of energy that you're giving them? I think I was thinking more about quantity versus quality in love. I was really letting my ego take over and being like, well, I meditate and I journal and I take care of myself in both physical and spiritual ways. So that means that in this situation, in this relationship, I'm in the right and I'm doing everything that I can, but they're not doing the same things that I'm doing, and so they're the one that's the issue. I would go into this kind of like toxic positivity mindset of being like, oh, well, that's okay, I'm just gonna keep doing me and I'm just gonna drop them. And what I was actually doing is seeing myself as something that I wasn't. Because there have been several instances where I have spiritually bypassed a friend. If you just do this, this, and this, then you'll feel better and like everything's gonna be fine. Instead of hearing their pain, hearing what they were going through and being like, you know what, that is completely valid and you should definitely sit with that uncomfortable emotion and sit with that pain and get to the root of it and understand why you're feeling that way. And then once you allow yourself to feel that completely and in all its entirety, all the crying and the anger and whatever pops up, then you will be able to let it go and truly move on, as opposed to what I was suggesting was really kind of putting aside the pain, just focusing on how do I get better? How do I feel better? And that is more of a temporary solution, because in the end, you never really address the root of the problem, which is looking at the pain, looking at yourself in the mirror, and feeling that and understand why you're feeling that and how you got to that point, and then letting it go. And then it will really, truly leave your body. And the next time that something like that happens to you, where you feel that pain, it's not going to be as devastating. It's not going to take over and consume your whole body, because you've already been here before, and now you're more equipped, and now you're stronger, and now you know how that manifests in your body, and you're just more educated on yourself. When I'm editing this, I'm probably gonna have to cut out like half of this video because I just be talking. But it's fine, because I missed you guys and I missed filming, and this is my first video back from my little unplanned hiatus, so time is a construct, and it really doesn't matter that I was gone for so long because I'm here now. Don't let capitalism or these toxic positivity accounts and people online tell you that you need to be on your shit all the time. Like, side hustle Twitter,
Y'all need to clock out.
y'all need to go home and be lazy, please, and stop telling the rest of us that we should be spending our stimulus checks to finally start that own business. We got way more issues that are more prevalent and pressing right now than joining an MLM and being a boss babe. Bitch, please. Man, that is a whole another side of things. Maybe I'll make a video on MLMs, and you know, y'all know all the people that have these businesses that are really doing the same thing as all these billionaires and, you know, people like Jeff Bezos, and they're doing the same shit, is just exploiting people, exploiting other people just like billionaires and the rich do, but on a smaller scale. I cannot tell, like, with this mirror if my face is matching my neck. Honestly, it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter, because after I film these videos, this shit is coming right off anyway. Have y'all experienced this, you know, toxic positivity, spiritual bypassing? Are y'all now kind of realizing that maybe you have experienced that or done it to someone else? There is nothing wrong with having done that boo-boo. The first step to fixing a problem is addressing that it exists, period. I don't think that we are taught so much how to address our problems and be able to apologize, and how to recognize when we are in the wrong or being hurtful or being deceitful. And I think there's a sort of shame and fear that's associated with admitting that you're wrong, or admitting that you did something that was not 100% genuine or with the best intentions, because of the backlash that we'll get. I'm thoroughly satisfied and impressed with this experience. I had to take a little break to finish the rest of my makeup except for the lips, because I obviously don't know how to talk and do makeup at the same time. I'll work on that. I'm looking like a delicious springtime peach. So I have seen a lot of instances where a Black person goes through some sort of trauma, and I'm just using this as an example because it has become a very relevant and important topic, is violence through the state. You had a family member that was murdered by a police officer, and in comes someone else from a spiritual perspective that tells you that it's okay because this happened all for a reason and that their death was not in vain. Now, I know that comes from good intentions. However, you are maybe unintentionally invalidating that person's experience and pain and grief and trauma by telling them that this is going to be temporary and that you'll get over it, and if you just do this, that, and the other, that you'll feel better and don't feel so bad because everything happens for a reason. When someone you love is gone, and not only gone but murdered, you are 1001% validated and expressing exactly how you feel and sitting with that pain and being angry and expressing how you feel. And no one should come to you and tell you otherwise. It's kind of like someone who's a Captain Obvious. It's like, like, yes, everything happens for a reason. Pain is temporary, right? It doesn't last forever. Like, we know these things, but it isn't always appropriate to state those things in every single space just because you're spiritual and just because you think it's going to help someone else. I think we do have to understand that while your intentions may be good, what really matters more is how it affects other people, because intentions really don't matter when you've hurt someone. Be balanced in your beliefs and think about if you were in the other person's shoes and you want to say something to them, how it might make them feel and how it might affect them, especially if they're a Black, brown, colonized, queer, disabled person. So thank you for sitting and listening to me chat and rant and vent and share my experience and explain a couple things that have been on my mind. And I hope that this helps you see a different perspective, even if you disagree with me. If you agree with me, that's great. Go ahead and like this video. If you don't, like this video too, or give it a thumbs down.
Any type of publicity is good publicity.
Thank you guys so much. I am sending you all the love and light, and see you next time.